And what is up, everyone? I am joejdh. I am the host of Beyond the Woodline. Real quick, before we get started, I'd like to give you guys my little spiel, if you will. For those of you who don't know, I am into the Bigfoot research field, and I am part of a group called the JRG, which stands for the Jevning Research Group. It is headed up and founded by Mr. William Jevning. That guy's got close to 50 years now in the Bigfoot field. He's a great guy. He's a no BS kind of a guy. Um, if you're interested in joining the team, shoot me an email. Let me know. We'd be happy to have you guys on. We do vet everyone because we don't want weirdos on our team. uh, so yeah, so if you're interested or if you want to go out with somebody, we've got teams in Florida, Ohio, New York State, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Oregon, Washington State, California, of course here in Texas, Mississippi. I'm sure I'm missing a couple of other states, but if you're in a state we don't have a team, we network with a bunch of other people. We can find you somebody in your state, hopefully somewhere near you. And yeah, and like I said, we vet everybody, so we will vet you and vet whoever we set you up with. Um, so if you're interested, let me know. Beyond.woodline@gmail.com. You don't have to get into the field if you don't want to. We understand not everybody has an interest in getting out into the woods, into the forest. It's a crazy place. Um, you can do your research from your phone, from your laptop, your computer. You can find techniques for us, suggestions. You can find witnesses, and you can even find places for us to go explore. Again, beyond.woodline@gmail.com. And as always, I know you guys don't tune in to hear me ramble on. Tonight, I have with me Susie. That's how you say it, Susie?
Yep, you got it.
Okay. Okay, good. I was like, I meant to ask you that before we went on. But yeah, Susie, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good for a Monday.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. I
How
always
about
do
you?
my shows on Monday. Yeah, I'm doing great. Yeah, I had a long day at work, but I'm home now and I can relax, so that's a good thing. Yeah. So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you involved into the whole pukwudgie research. Dang, say that fast 3 times. Pukwudgie research. There we go.
So I think my obsession with pukwudgies started from childhood trauma. So when I was a kid, our boogeyman was the pukwudgie. So my dad would say, "Don't go too close to the swamp. The pukwudgies will get you." Or don't go too far into the woods because the pukwudgies will get you. Um, so that was kind of what started my fascination with them. But that was as a child before the internet.
Mhm.
So all I knew was to be scared of little people in the woods or down by the swamp. And then as I got older and had more access to things, I started wondering, like, what were these things my dad was really talking about? Like, where did he come up with that? And that's kind of what kicked things off for me.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Just real quick, uh, Miss Sandra says hi and welcome Susie. She's one of my longtime listeners. I hope you're feeling better, Miss Sandra. I know she was kind of uh, getting some rehab work done for herself, so I hope you're feeling better. Um, yeah, that's kind of a weird thing to get into. You know what I'm saying? There's so many people that's interested in Bigfoot, interested in the paranormal UFOs, and even like Loch Ness, right? Or any kind of water cryptids, right? Um, that's why when I came across you and I had seen you for a while, posted stuff about the pukwudgies, and I was like, I gotta get her on because nobody else talks about this stuff. Nobody else talks about this subject. Do you know anything about where your dad got this from?
So my dad is from Fall River, Massachusetts, which is on the southern tip of the Bridgewater Triangle.
Okay.
And that's kind of um, Pukwudgie Grand Central Station right there.
Okay.
So he grew up with it. Um, the Freetown is the next town over from Fall River, they actually have pukwudgie crossing signs there.
Right.
And the fire department has special pukwudgie protocol because one of the things they're known to do is start fires.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Yeah, in the book I was showing you, I saw that they had put signs up. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
guess yeah, that's pretty cool.
I have seen the sign. It is actually there.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah. So what made you say, you know what, I want to like focus on this and learn about this and actually like get as involved as you are?
So when I started to look for stuff, there wasn't much.
Mhm.
And then the things that you do find contradict each other.
Right.
Um, so I said, like, what is going on here? Why, like, everyone kind of has like heard the word pukwudgie,
Mhm.
maybe has a vague idea about what they are, but there's so much like contradictory information out there. But what really kind of set me down the path of like full blown research was I actually started um, researching my mother's side of the family and found out that there is a connection to the Wampanoag tribe through my mother's side. Not related. My mother's side of the family, they were the bad guys in King Philip's War.
Okay.
So I start researching, and this was in like, 2020 when everyone else is doing like the 23andMe. I already knew about, my genealogy. So I kind of set out to like figure out what these people were actually like and not
Mhm.
just, what country they came from originally. And I did not find anything good at all. But it turned into, the same region and the same tribes that the pukwudgie lore was from.
Mhm.
So then it kind of intersected. And you can't really understand either of those things without understanding the Wampanoag tribe.
Okay.
So it actually, looking into the Wampanoag tribe and the history of my mom's family, brought up these creatures that my dad had tried to scare me with as a child.
Okay. So what are your what does your research tell you that these things are, and then what does the lore say that they are?
So, well, just the physical description, they're about knee high, have smooth gray skin, and they have like bristles or quills on their head and back like a porcupine. And their faces are kind of humanish, but also are described as being chipmunk like
Okay.
or having like exaggerated features of a human, like big ears, big nose. Um, what I started to find was that all of the Algonquian people, so that's like Great Lakes region, New England, any tribe that spoke Algonquin, um, they all had pukwudgie lore, but only the Wampanoags said that they were the bad guys.
Okay.
Everyone else said, they're just kind of mischievous. If you leave them alone, you'll be fine. But in Wampanoag lore, and that's like that's in the Bridgewater Triangle area,
Mhm.
um, they're not nice to them. So the the lore is that they had one of their creator lores. His name was Maushup. He was a giant. They say he created the cape, and the Pukwudgies had always lived in harmony with Maushup and the Wampanoag people, but the Wampanoag people started to pay more attention to Maushup than the Pukwudgies. So they started to basically be like annoying little brats
Mhm.
and just playing tricks on the Wampanoag people to get their attention, just like a little kid would.
Yeah.
You've got kids, you know how it is. So the Wampanoag people got fed up with their tricks, though, and they went to Squanit, who was Mauship's wife. Because you go to the wife when you have a problem.
Right.
You know, that's true across all
Right.
generations.
Yeah. 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 Of course. Yeah.
And she went to her husband and said, "Hey, you got to do something about these annoying little guys running around. Like they're wreaking havoc." So Mauship, he's a giant. He picked them all up and just threw them as far as he could across the country.
Oh, wow.
So that's how you have pukwudgies in other areas too, because Mauship
Okay.
threw them. But then the ones that found their way back were mad. And the lore is that they were mad, so they killed Mauship's 5 sons. And
Oh.
then Mauship then died of grief because his sons were killed. That was the story that was originally presented that I found. Digging deeper into the roots of the story, it was 1934. This woman named Elizabeth Reynard wrote a book called The Narrowland, and it was about the history of the folklore of Cape Cod. And she interviewed 2 Mashpee Wampanoag people. Their names were Red Shell and Wild Horse, and they were tribal historians. But because it wasn't safe for them to like blatantly say that white people are bad, they used pukwudgies as a metaphor for Europeans.
Hmm.
So they took existing lore of the pukwudgies, but then changed it to tell a story about what happened to them when Europeans came to America. So all of the bad things about pukwudgies are about us in reality.
Okay.
So it's around that time where you get most of the stories like people know today.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm thinking of some of the stuff. Yeah, it kind of makes sense, right? Um, so when you do your investigations or research, is it all mainly confined to the area that you're in then?
Uh, Predominantly the
Yeah.
area I'm in,
Yeah.
because it is it's a little bit more of a checkered history
Right.
where I am, but I have kind of spread out from there.
Hmm.
Um, the Ojibwe and Algonquin people, their version of pukwudgies are just they're little tricksters and harmless.
Hmm.
They are known to steal children, but
Hmm.
only if the parents are bad.
Okay. Okay.
So I don't know if you could say that's like if you're the parents, yeah, they're bad.
Hmm.
But if you're the kid and they're getting you away from the bad parents, maybe not so much.
Right. So like in the Bigfoot world, there are like the Yeti and the Amistad and the Yowie. Is that true for the Pukwudgie also?
Yeah, Pukwudgie isn't even the original name for them. It
Hmm.
was Maquisi Wudge, and then the Bagwagini also. Like
Okay.
there's all different names for it's arguable if they're the same creatures or they're like cousins or what they are. It's kind of vague.
Right.
Um, but every tribe has a different name, different spellings of names,
Hmm.
but similar stories and
Okay.
characters.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Yeah, I get to have similar stories and stuff like that when it comes down to it. Right. Um, what are some of the stories that you've heard that kind of stand out to you? And I'm talking about like from actual like eyewitnesses.
My favorite story is a woman named Joan, and
Mhm.
this was 93 or 94. And this happened in Freetown, Mass. That's the town that has the Pukwudgie crossing signs.
Okay.
She was in the Freetown State Forest with her dog. And most of the Pukwudgie sightings in the area are people walking their dogs. I don't know if it's just that people tend to be outside more with their dogs, or if the dogs are alerting them to the pukwudgies. But that's what happened with Joan. She was out in the Freetown State Forest just to go for a hike, and her dog kind of took off the trail a little bit, and she got about 10, she was actually only like 10 feet away from it, and it was standing on a rock, and she described it as about 2 feet tall, smooth gray skin, and she said it had hair on its arms and its head. And she said it was as surprised to see her as she was to see it. And she kind of like froze for a while until the dogs are always the smartest people in these sightings. The dog kind of came to and said, "We got to get away from this thing."
Right.
And it took off back towards the path. But the interesting thing is, after this experience, she saw that same creature looking into her bedroom window at least 3 times.
Oh, wow. That's
And
crazy.
she said she kind of lived in terror for years after that. And she said she was fully awake. Like, it wasn't the middle of the night. Like, she had just woken up. She said she was fully awake when she saw these things. And it was just a little creep peeking in her window.
That's interesting. So real quick, Victor says, can we get easier names like Tony, John, Billy? Because I can't spell those names.
I
Yeah.
think that's why they changed it to pukwudgie,
Yeah.
because that was the name that was easier than the other ones.
Right. So the lady with the dog, um, what's your impression of that story? Was this something that was mean, or was it just curious? You think? What's your impression of that whole
Yeah,
story?
so she was scared because it was something weird, I think.
Right. Yeah.
It never went after her. But the kind of like overall impression I get of pukwudgies is they're just annoying.
Right.
And like, obviously, if it was peeking in her window, it didn't kind of respect personal boundaries, but that's human morality. They don't have that.
Right.
Um, and that kind of, it's disconcerting to us. No one wants to have anyone looking through their window.
Right. Yeah. Especially something that you think shouldn't exist, or something that's not real. Mom, that's my mom. She said it's creepy.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Shannon said looking through the window would be terrifying. Yeah, I can imagine that would be. Um, yeah. So and one of the other things that you mentioned also was like the quills, right? Do you think they serve a purpose?
So they're also known to be shapeshifters. And not all of these in-person, like modern sightings, have the quills.
Okay.
I question if that is a holdover from this 1934 retelling where we get all the bad information for, or maybe porcupines are one of the shape-shifting favorites that they do.
Yeah. Yeah. I could totally see it as why it would be one of the favorite things to do. I guess it'd be because porcupines actually do get pretty big. They're not these little small little rodents that people think they are. They actually get pretty big, and it might be something easy for them to shape shift in. And when you see a porcupine, your first reaction is to stay away from that thing, right? Yeah.
And it is an Ojibwe word, and the Ojibways also have the Wendigo, and those are also associated with porcupines, which is recent information for me. So I think there might be some kind of significance with porcupines, at least to certain tribes,
Mhm.
too.
And have you ever heard a story of these things just being outright aggressive?
Not so. There's a lot of like this is a pukwudgie story type things,
Right.
but no name or exact incident associated with it.
Mhm.
So there's just kind of like general lore as
Right.
opposed to like actual stories about that.
Mhm.
Um, there's things, and some of this is definitely from the 1934 book. Um, they're known to shoot poison arrows
Hmm.
or have magic dust. That was how they said they killed Mauship's sons, is they had this magic dust that they blew in their eyes and blinded them.
Hmm.
And the starting fires, a lot of luring people places like into the woods to get lost or off of cliffs. In Freetown, there's the Assinet Ledge, uh, and there's a lot of suicides or accidents on that ledge. And one of the theories is it's pukwudgies luring people to jump off of the ledge.
Hmm.
So it's a lot of luring people to their doom in the woods.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and so when you hear stories, or whether they're from actual eyewitnesses or not, or something that that you read from 1934, do you think that it's like other entities, other beings, other than Pukwudgies? That.
Some of it, yeah. So I always believe people when not always, most of the time I believe people when they say they saw something,
Right.
especially if, you can tell if someone's really scared,
Right.
something happened, right?
Right.
A lot of them don't really fit the traditional description of pukwudgies.
Okay.
So you can either say that's a different creature altogether, or because they are shapeshifters, maybe it's not. But I think little people lore in general is like that. It's very vague and, not a ton of details about it. But I think it's too much prevalence for it to not be something,
Mhm.
because just every culture has these kind of stories.
Right. And yeah, you talk about the fear factor, right? Um, in general, like in the Bigfoot world, for example, if someone sees a bear, or they might be scared, but there's a whole different fear, when it comes to someone running into a Bigfoot, right? And so yeah, I would kind of believe that these people saw something that was out of the norm, right? And like with the Pukwudgies, they didn't just see a porcupine or whatever. They saw something that was really terrifying to them, whether it was trying to scare them or not. You know, so, yeah,
I would believe that maybe like early settlers that had never seen a porcupine before
right, yeah,
might have seen one, but not the people in the 90s. Those people knew what a porcupine was.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. So, is there anything as far as um, any modern day, like I'm talking within like the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years of any interesting stories that you've heard?
I have heard several,
Mhm.
none that I think are specifically pukwudgies, but definitely little people
Mhm.
stories. Um, Someone was telling me recently that when they were a kid, they thought they saw they called it a pukwudgie. I think it was just another kind of little person, but in a supermarket bathroom.
Hmm.
And their parents thought that they were crazy. As an adult now, they swear it was real. Um, there's lots of stories out of the Hockomock Swamp, which is where the Wampanoag, it's the
Right.
Bridgewater Triangle area. Lots of stories coming from there. Not all of those, I think, are legitimate. There's this one guy named Tom who is a paranormal investigator that has some stories that are just too like textbook for me. Like,
Yeah.
you saw it on that Bridgewater Triangle documentary that came out in 2013, and you made a story kind of thing. Um, but uh, there's there's a lot of people that don't want to talk about it
Mm,
or don't want their name out
yeah.
there, which those I think those people are probably the ones that have legitimately seen something.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm trying to collect some more recent stories. I haven't heard anything substantial
Hmm.
in that happened in the past like 10-15 years.
Right.
Everything more recently just kind of you can kind of debunk it or write it off somehow.
Right.
But I'm sure that there are people that have seen something in the area. Um, but you do hear almost constantly stories out of South America now about
Right.
little people.
Right. Yeah, like before we got on the air, I was saying about my friend from Mexico. About he was growing up in the mountains, and his brother being chased by a little person. What he told his brother? He came into the house. It was like midnight, 1 o'clock, and he was like scared. He said he was balled up in the corner, just shaking. You know. Um, and I'll tell you about the people that are here in Texas. Um, and I didn't snap until I saw your stuff and started going through all your pukwudgie stuff. I'm like, I wonder if that's the same thing, or maybe something similar to that. And they've told me that they've seen what they call little people, and that but their skin is all black. And then I sent you that picture that the woman had taken. Um, but they, of course, they have a bunch of stuff going on their property. Is there anything? Because I do plan on going to their property. Hopefully, I get to go up there within the next February, maybe March. I'll go up there in March. I got a lot of stuff lined up in February. Is there anything I should look for?
I would take a dog with you.
Okay. Okay.
Dogs seem to either alert you to them or track them. Either way,
Okay.
let someone borrow a dog from someone.
And they might have a dog, if I'm not mistaken. They might have a dog.
Good. I think
Okay.
dogs might be more in tune with things than we are, or could
Okay.
definitely hear better than us.
Mhm.
So I would take a dog. Um, light orbs too.
Okay.
So in the Bridgewater Triangle, I don't know. I haven't heard this phenomena everywhere, but I have heard of it in other areas aside from the Bridgewater Triangle.
Mhm.
But they're here they call them Taipei Wonkas.
Okay.
They're equivalent to like the European will-o'-the-wisps. So the Wampanoag lore says that these are like souls of Native Americans who have been killed,
Mhm.
or some people say specifically killed by pukwudgies. But people often see one of those light orbs before they see a pukwudgie. Like the light orb lures them to the pukwudgie.
Okay.
So watch for balls of light.
Okay.
Follow it. Maybe
Follow it.
don't follow it. Follow it at your own risk. Don't
Yeah.
do it because
Yeah.
I told you to. I would
Yeah.
follow it, but then again, that
Yeah.
might be how I die.
Disappear. Yeah. Yes, I may be. Yeah. No, I would follow it, but I would certainly be cautious about it. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't be just like fucking running through the trees. But I would be cautious with it
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah.
would die trying to pet a bear, so don't listen to me.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But orbs are seen around Bigfoot also. People do report that. I don't think that necessarily means anything, but I think that there is something to it. You know. Um, so like here outside of Houston, north of Houston, is a San Luis Forest, and I've known people who have seen the orbs just by themselves. And they've said they range anywhere from a golf ball to a basketball size. So and up way up in the trees, even going across the lake. You know, um, and there's a couple of spots here in Texas. There's one called it's in Marfa, Texas. It's called the Marfa Lights. They've had that phenomenon that goes on over there. And then there's a place in the Big Thicket Forest, which is also outside of Houston, and called Saratoga Road, and they have lights down there too that people see. There's even a spot here, pretty much in downtown Houston, in Herman Park area, where people see orbs. But that's a place where a lot of soldiers were buried from the Civil War.
Yeah. So Hakamoks, that means place where the spirits dwell.
Hmm.
And that was sacred land for the Wampanoag people. They felt they buried their dead there, but they also felt like there were spirits that already lived there before them, like ancient kind of elemental type things.
Hmm.
Um, and it was also the site of King Philip's War. So just thousands of people died there.
Right.
But with that area, there's so many other things going on too. You have UFOs, Bigfoot, giant snakes, ghosts all over the place.
Hmm.
So whether it's some kind of like thin spot
Right.
or there's something's wrong there.
Yeah. I, that, that, I think in that book they even mentioned Thunderbirds.
Thunderbirds, yep, that's another
Yeah.
one. Yep.
Yeah.
There's also a hitchhiking ghost, a redheaded
Yeah.
hitchhiking ghost.
Okay. Are you a ghost?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Well, you're not hitchhiking, so I guess we're good.
No,
So,
got my own car. We're
okay.
good.
Good deal. Good deal. So, you know, talking about here in Texas with the people that contacted me about all the stuff going on their property, and like I said, they too, man, they've got the little people, they got Bigfoot, they've seen portals, they've seen orbs, they've even seen the creature with the antlers on its head. You think there are a lot more spots like that around than what people may think?
Yes, but at the same time, there's less and less.
Hmm.
I don't think some of these creatures want to be around humans.
Hmm. Yeah.
So as places become more populated, just like regular wildlife, they're retreating or dying out possibly.
Hmm. Right.
So
Yeah. Encroachment is making them go somewhere else, or like I said, just it's a survival kind of a thing for them. Either they will or they won't, survive.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, do you have any other interest other than the pukwudgies as far as all this crazy cryptid stuff goes or paranormal stuff? I don't even know what do you classify the pukwudgie as? You.
So a lot of people think they're like fae creatures.
Mhm.
I like the term elemental more.
Okay.
Um, I would because they do seem to be connected with land in certain places,
Yeah.
and they're always out in the wild. But there are little people that will go in your house, like duendes, like I was telling you about earlier. They are known to live in people's basements, attics, things like that. They're smaller than pukwudgies. So they're maybe like, you know,
Mhm.
6 inches or so. Um, and they're also, it's the same kind of thing. They're mischievous, but usually harmless unless you mess with them.
Mhm.
So in all little people lore, it's kind of like a fuck around and find out type of thing.
Right.
Like it's like if you and I are at a gas station and we're both pumping our gas. If you leave me alone, we're fine.
Mhm.
If you bother me and won't go away, you're getting a lemonade thrown at you or something.
Right. Or
Like
gas on.
that's, little people level. They're smaller than everyone. So they have to be a little bit kind of conniving and ingenuitive on how they retaliate.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, and that makes sense too. They got to be able to, and you know what? That's actually kind of makes sense because some of the most like ferocious creatures are small and tiny, right? Yeah.
Like I tell people all the time, like people are always saying how short people are mean.
Mhm.
We have to be more on the offense because we're smaller than everyone.
Mhm.
So like I have to be smarter than you to take because you're bigger than me.
Mhm.
So
Right.
I've got to be a little bit on guard and I have to be a little bit, I'm not going to say crazy, but a little bit out there and willing to, do psychological warfare as opposed to
Yeah.
like one-on-one.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. So where were we going with this before I asked you? Um, I know I asked you what they were. We were going somewhere else with this conversation. No, I don't remember. Anyway. Oh, actually, what else what were you interested in, right? Besides the puck one.
I like the real high strangeness,
Mm.
like Kentucky goblins behind me. Got those up
Okay.
there. Anything that's real weird, which, luckily I live near the Bridgewater Triangle.
Hmm.
I've been trying to get out there more. I'd like to see a thunderbird.
Right.
I'm not sure if I want to see one of the giant snakes that they talk about there.
Hmm.
Um, I'd take it if that's all I can get.
Hmm.
But they seem to have their own um, kind of offshoot of Bigfoot. They look more like orangutans there.
Okay.
I would love to see one of those. They're sighted around this certain lake in that area too.
Okay.
So hopefully, if I get out there enough, I can see one. I need to get a dog. I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you need a dog. So how giant are the giant snakes out there?
So they're said to be like, like you see once in a while like a Burmese python,
Hmm.
something like the huge ones in Florida. I've
Right.
heard like 25 feet long and as thick as a stovepipe is how they normally describe it. And the giant snake sightings are like pretty common, and
Hmm.
they go back to like colonial times too.
Oh wow.
So there's like written sightings from like the 16 and 1700s of those.
I would not want to see one of those things run into them.
And we don't have big snakes in New England. You
Right.
hard you hardly ever see a snake at all, and when you do, they're teeny tiny. So to see a huge snake here is not normal.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of snakes or rats for that matter, but yeah. And as much as I go out into the woods, I don't like snakes at all. I am, I am not a fan of the snake. Yeah. Yeah. So Don here put trolls. Are there trolls in America? Have you ever heard of trolls? Oh, hold on. There he goes right there. He put another comment. He just put, here we go. Trolls. Do we have trolls in America? I don't know if I've
I
ever heard.
mean, you could
Yeah.
call a pukwudgie a troll. Do we know
Right.
that they're any different?
No. Yeah.
And so I'm going to sidetrack for a minute again. There is a theory that when the continents were connected in Pangea,
Hmm.
the Appalachians were the same mountain range as the Scottish Highlands and
Right.
the mountain range in Greenland and Iceland and on the western coast of Africa. They were all connected. It's the same mountain range.
Hmm.
But in all of those places, you have little people lore. Like
Okay.
in Scotland, they have, well, in Ireland, it's the leprechauns. And then, Iceland, you have elves.
Hmm.
So there is a theory that these are all the same creatures
Right.
and connected to the land, or that that mountain range is just a thin area and they're kind of using like portals to go back and forth.
Hmm.
I would say they seem more like cousins than the same thing.
Right. You know what's it's interesting that you brought that up, Pangea, because maybe 2 or 3 days ago I saw what's his name, Degrassi.
Neil deGrasse
Yeah,
Tyson.
there you go. Yeah, he was talking about that, and he was like, people before they were able to actually map everything out and be able to tell that this was all one solid continent at one time. That the way they were figuring that out was by uh, you know archaeology, right? Looking through stuff, finding bones, finding similar creatures, right? So the fact that he said that, and then you come up here and talk about that too. That's pretty interesting, and I think you pretty much nailed it. That they could all be the same thing, but at this point they're distant cousins or what have you, right? Yeah.
Right. Just like other animals that got separated on different continents and evolved differently.
Hmm.
It could be. I'm not saying it is, but
No,
I like that theory. It's
no,
interesting.
yeah, I like it too, and it would explain a lot, for sure. Um, so like we talked about like in Mexico with the little people in Mexico, and then my stuff here in Texas with some of the people that I worked well not worked with, but who contacted me. Are there any other areas of concentration that people may not be aware of?
So I just saw a woman last week in Argentina who posted, I believe it was on TikTok, that
Okay.
she had encountered a little person. And so I looked in that area. Argentina seems to be another hot spot,
They're a strange area too, but go ahead.
but it's another mountain range too.
Okay.
It's
Oh
a
yeah,
different
yeah.
mountain range,
Right.
but there's that connection there. Um, and it seemed like there it was like, oh, it's like, yeah, I saw a stray dog, like that common. Like, yeah, oh, you saw a little person, so did I saw one last week.
Right. Yeah.
But she didn't describe the one she encountered as being like scary or threatening at all. She was laughing about it. She said it was kind of like following her, and like they kind of are like little kids almost. They're just like annoying little kids
Hmm.
in most places.
Right. Yeah. And maybe they're just just mischievous, like you were saying, and maybe they get a kick out of scaring us, and they think it's funny. It's a game to them.
It's like a cat. Like
Right. Yeah.
they just knock stuff off your shelves just because they can.
Yeah. So like my friend in Mexico, when he was talking about his brother, so the whole story behind that was that he was walking home. He had went out that night. He was coming back home. Like I said, they lived in the mountains. It's a place called San Luis Potosí, and it's outside the city. And they lived in literally like they were very poor. They lived in a shack. They had literally had dirt floors, right? Um, he was walking home, and he said that his mom had always told him not to be going out late at night because the little people would get him, right? He came home that night, and he's burst into the door, went to the corner, was balled up crying, and he told them when he was finally able to talk was that he was walking and that a little man was following him. And the faster he walked, the faster it would walk, until eventually he was running, and then it was running, chasing him, and he was laughing the whole time. He said,
See, it's like a little kid.
"Yeah,
A little kid would do that.
yeah, yeah."
Yep.
And I think he was like basically saying, "Ah, I scared you, right? Or who knows? Maybe he was just having fun, thinking he was playing a game too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I think, it's kind of like watching a nature documentary. If it's filmed from the perspective of the mouse, the hawk that swoops down and grabs it is the bad guy. If it's filmed from the perspective of the starving hawk, that hawk swooping down when it hasn't had a meal in weeks to get that mouse, you're rooting for the hawk. It's whose
right,
perspective you're looking at it from.
right. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, I know and I've seen people like, man, I wish I could go help that rabbit, or go help that, like no, the other creature's doing his job, doing what he's got
Yeah.
to do. Yeah,
We're just not used to being the rabbit.
right.
So it's, anything we would think of as inherently evil in
Mhm,
that situation.
mhm,
But to me, they just seem like annoying. Like they don't understand boundaries like we do.
mhm.
They kind of just want to mess with people a little bit for their own entertainment. I mean, pukwudgies probably don't have YouTube, so they need
Right.
to entertain themselves, some way. But they're also like duendes too. They'll go in your house and they'll hide your keys or they'll hide your wallet, things like that.
Mhm.
but I've heard stories of people who have accidentally killed one, and then their entire life was downhill from there.
Hmm.
So they think that duendes retaliated because they killed one of their family members.
Hmm. That's
But,
interesting. Yeah.
what would you do if someone killed one of your family members?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Do whatever I got to do. Yeah. You're right. So, do you have any other areas that you would want to go and check out and research besides where you're at?
I've been looking lately. I've just started looking at Indiana. They
Really?
seem to have a lot of stories. I haven't gotten too deep into it, but they go back to the early 1900s so far. I've gotten back that far.
Hmm.
The physical description's a little bit off, but there's enough stories that makes me think that something's going on there too.
And I wouldn't think of Indiana as like a hot spot for anything, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting too. Yeah. What about Canada? Does Canada have it? Anything there, like as far as the pukwudgies go? Or?
So when you're looking at the native lore, there's stories there too. I haven't heard of any like eyewitness accounts that were recent though.
Okay.
But on the east coast of Canada is supposed to be still pukwudgie territory.
Okay. Pukwudgie territory in the east of Canada. Cool.
But they have the nice ones up there. Just like
Okay.
Canadians are nicer than us. Their pukwudgies
Okay.
are ours.
They're nice. They're nice. Okay. Maybe that's where it comes from. Uh, the Canadians being nice comes from their pukwudgies.
Yep, maybe.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, have you ever been scared when you've been out looking around?
So, Don is asking any little creatures covered in hair, which is interesting because I have two stories of little creatures covered in hair.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's go with those.
All right. So, probably these are both from the Bridgewater Triangle.
Hmm.
This one is probably one of the most famous pukwudgie stories. Um, his name was Bill Russo. He's written books since then. He was on the Bridgewater Triangle documentary that came out in 2013.
Okay.
He was working, I think, second shift at the time. He got home around midnight. He went out to walk his dog, Samantha, again, walking your dog. And he lived in Raynham, Mass, which is in the Bridgewater Triangle. And he was in this area where there was those big power lines that go there's like a cleared path, and then there's those huge power lines, and that kind of area is known where a lot of animals travel, but also where some of these creatures travel. And he was out walking his dog around midnight, and there was this street he was on had just one street light. His dog starts kind of growling, and he doesn't see anything immediately. But as he gets closer to the streetlight, he sees a little creature step into that streetlight. And he described it as about 4 feet tall and covered in matted black fur. And he said it had a pot belly, which is another, common thing with little people.
Yeah.
Some people even say, like, you can't tell if they have clothes on or not because their gut hangs so low. And he also said it had glowing green eyes. This is the only story I've heard where one spoke. And what he said is first he heard like a high-pitched squeal. And then this creature said, Iwanchu, Kia, Kia. And it kept saying that, Iwanchu, Kia, Kia. And what he thinks it said is, we want you, come here, come here. It was like trying to speak English.
Right.
That's what he thinks it was saying. And he said he felt he wasn't really scared. He felt kind of drawn to it a little bit, but ultimately was freaked out and decided to just turn back and go home. But that obviously left an impression on him because he went on to write books about it. I don't think he made much money off of it, but he is more than willing to put his name out there. And like anyone that has seen a UFO or Bigfoot or anything like that, it doesn't benefit you to talk about it historically.
Right.
So for him to do that, I really do think he saw something. But 4 feet tall, covered with matted black fur, isn't the traditional description of a pukwudgie.
Right.
So is that a different creature, or did it shapeshift? We're not sure. It's the Bridgewater Triangle. It could be A, B, C, D, none of the above. We don't know.
Right.
But he feels like it was a pukwudgie.
Okay. Yeah. The name sounds familiar to me. I know I've heard the name before.
Yeah, if you watch anything on the Bridgewater Triangle or read any books about it, that's the story that they always talk about.
Okay.
Yep.
What was the other hair-covered creature?
The other sighting was a woman named Mary in Norwell, Mass, which is again that same area. She was walking a dog again. She was actually dog sitting for a friend. The dog kind of froze and started growling, and she looked where the dog was looking, and she saw, very similar to what Bill described, a little person, matted black fur, growing green eyes, just standing there. And like Joan's sighting that I talked about earlier, she said she froze and they were just kind of like staring at each other. The creature froze too. And eventually the dog decided it was time to go. And they got out of there without incident. It didn't come after them or anything. But after that, there were several times where she heard knocking on the side of her house or tapping. Little creatures came up to her house, similar to what Joan had experienced afterwards. They seem to, if they like you, I think they kind of like get obsessed with people.
Okay.
And they seem to like women. Like men, you hear sightings from men. Men are never bothered at home afterwards, but there's quite a few sightings where women had encountered them and then later they showed up at their house. Yeah. With Joan, it was peeking in her bedroom window. With Mary, it was knocking on the side of her house. And she said that happened repeatedly, and that was all she could think of was the creature that she'd saw.
Yeah, and I think that's probably pretty common for a lot of these different cryptids. We hear the same thing in the Bigfoot world about women seem to be, I don't know if you want to say targeted more, but like if the husband is a truck driver or works on oil rigs or whatever, and they're gone, the Bigfoot will come around. And when the husband's home and the wife's trying to tell the husband about it, he's like, you're imagining things. Yeah. But yeah, and it is interesting about the dog. I wonder if they are curious as to what we're doing with dogs.
Yeah, like why do you have that weird looking wolf? Like,
yeah.
what is going on?
Or why does he have you?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder if that's a thought process for them. What's going on with that relationship?
Or part of me wonders too, like maybe I have walking past one before and just not noticed it.
Right.
Because
I'm sure
I
you
didn't have
have.
a dog to alert me to it. Because in most of these stories, the dog always sees it first.
Right. Yeah.
So who knows what we're walking past?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I tell people all the time. But I think a lot of these creatures probably see us more than we see them. You know, um, so we're getting close to the end of the show, but I do want to ask you, what about evidence, whether it be physical evidence or any kind of trace evidence? Has there been anything really substantial?
Um, about as much as Bigfoot, you get a blurry picture once in a while.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. I've seen a lot of dark masses through bushes pictures.
Hmm.
Um, nothing, no footprints even.
Okay.
Um, no hair, nothing like that.
Yeah.
So, no, aside from the eyewitness stories and the lore, no physical evidence at all.
Hmm. Okay. So you wouldn't even know like what their feet look like, I guess, huh? That'd be
No,
interesting. Yeah.
no. And again, they have that shapeshifter thing to hide behind. Maybe we have seen their footprints and we think it's something else.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, no one knows what a pukwudgie foot looks like.
Hmm.
No.
Well, cool beans. Susie, thanks a lot for doing the show, man. I really appreciate it. If you want to give out your information where people can contact you, you have a website, social media, whatever you want.
Yep. Pukwudgies.blogspot.com is my blog. It's a new one, but there is a contact form there. If you have seen any kind of little person, I am interested to hear it, willing to talk to you about it. Feel free to hit me up there, or Susy Bastille on Facebook. I'm always there talking about pukwudgies, whether you want to hear it or not. So if you're interested, want to stay tuned on anything new I find out, that's the best place to do it.
Cool, yeah. Yeah, and if you guys can't get in contact with her, just let me know and I'll shoot her a message for you or whatever you guys need. And Susie, if you need me to oh well, first of all, Don saying to repeat that, please. I get your information.
Pukwudgies.blogspot.com is my blog. And Susy Bastille, Bastille, you can find me on Facebook.
Yeah, and if like I said, if you need me to share anything out, or if you got something going on, like uh, did you add the link in the bio?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, okay, yeah, you guys, if you guys are interested, go through her bio, in the show description, and the link is there. But anytime you've got anything you want me to share out, just hit me up or tag me in it, and I'll post it for you too.
Excellent.
Cool beans. Well, everyone, uh, Susie, thanks for doing the show. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone, yeah, everyone else in the chat, thanks a lot. You guys always having some good comments and good questions, so I do appreciate that. Next Monday, I don't remember who I have. I never, but well, I have a show next Monday for sure. And Susie, anything else you want to add before we go?
Just keep an eye out for those little mischievous people,
Yeah, that's a little 5'2" redheads. You got to watch out for those too.
especially those. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, everyone. You guys have a good night. Susie,